most of our practices in child rearing have been based on externally controlling the child. How am I going to make this kid behave, and how am I going to consequence them if they don't? And both of those are external. And so one of the things that we look at the very beginning of all the parents' meetings is, you can get kids to behave. We've got the power. We're the big people. We've got the resources. But why do you want them to behave? Do you want them to behave to avoid pain because they're scared? Do you want them to behave to please us because they feel guilty? Or do you want them to behave to think about the kind of person they want to be and get themselves stronger?
Our guest today has spent the last 2 decades teaching control theory throughout Canada, the United States, Europe, and Asia. She has served on the faculties of several universities and has done training for a broad range of school-based programs, drug rehabilitation centers, and correctional facilities. She's the author of Restitution, Restructuring School Discipline, My Child is a Pleasure, and most recently, It's All About We. For me, her passion and commitment to help us shift our family dynamic to a team-like atmosphere where we tackle life challenges and problems together is evident in all that she does. The result is a family home where power struggles are replaced with greater respect and deeper connection. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to the amazing Diane Gossen. Diane, welcome to Empowered Kids TV.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I want to dive straight in terms of talking about restitution. So let's start by talking about what restitution is, and why do you think there's a need for parents to understand the role that it can play in today's families?
Okay. Restitution, the two-sentence definition is, it's creating the conditions for the person to fix their mistakes and return to the group strengthened. And the way that I would describe it is, because, you know, sometimes when I'm on the airplane, somebody says, what do you do? And I tell them, and they say, well, what is it? And I say, well, do you have any kids? And then they're always interested in it. And so sometimes it's teenagers, sometimes it's small kids. And so I say, well, there's sort of 3 sides to the restitution triangle. The first is, it's okay to make a mistake. And the reason we say that is so the brain doesn't downshift and the child can be calm to think things through for themselves. The second one, which is the most controversial one, is, could you have done worse? Because we always say to kids, you should have done it better. But there's always a worse alternative that the person's avoiding, and that's where the real understanding of the child's behavior is. And then the third side is where they look inside and they think about the kind of person they want to be, what we believe in our family, and what their need is. And sometimes I call that the NBA, like the National Basketball Association, to help parents remember, needs, beliefs, and the A stands for Intentionality, because restitution is really related to the Aboriginal child rearing practices. And the word Intentionality is the kind of person you want to be. So there you go, in a nutshell.
I want to touch on that a bit more, because what I want parents to take away from this conversation is that restitution isn't a new fad on the parenting scene. This is based on concrete science and historic practices that we've had in family life for a very long time. So can you touch a bit more on the background in terms of the combination of scientific research and the indigenous practices?
Well, the research that we use is the research on the brain, that when the child's upset, then they can't think, and the frontal lobes is where we become a moral person. And they can't think when they're upset. And so the brain downshifts, goes to the amygdala, and then it's fight or flight. And then we try to have a conversation with the kid. So that's the research that we use. But the other research that we use, and I think it's very important, most of our practices in child rearing have been based on externally controlling the child. How am I going to make this kid behave, and how am I going to consequence them if they don't? And both of those are external. And so one of the things that we look at the very beginning of all the parents' meetings is, you can get kids to behave. We've got the power. We're the big people. We've got the resources. But why do you want them to behave? Do you want them to behave to avoid pain because they're scared? Do you want them to behave to please us because they feel guilty? Or do you want them to behave to think about the kind of person they want to be and get themselves stronger? And that is the most powerful thing, because even when we give the words of restitution, what are you going to do to fix it? If you just say, what are you going to do to fix it? That's fine. That's sort of neutral. But lots of people say, so what are you going to do to fix it? Or something happens, right? Or, oh, what are you going to do to fix it? And then that creates guilt. And then when there's anger and guilt in the child, they can't think and solve the problem. We're all about solving the problem, not exploring it.
I absolutely love that. I think it's so powerful, and it hones in very quickly on the dynamic within family life. And I think parents think when a kid makes a mistake, there's a few things. One, I have to handle this right away. So there's no space. I must attack this right away. And I have to do one of two things. It first is I must show you in no uncertain terms that this behavior is not tolerated, and we will stamp it out. So there's some sort of behavior to stamp it out. And it's just, and it does come from a great place. It comes from the intention of wanting better for our kids, but really overcome with the fear that if I don't act now, my kids gonna, you extrapolate in your mind and you see your kids later down the road turning into horrible people because I didn't fix this one mistake right away. And then I think we get caught up in the fact that, okay, so consequences and punishment didn't work. So now I try to dangle a little reward. And then I say, okay, I'm going to try to motivate you to do what I want to do by making this reward as special as it can be. And I think for a lot of parents, if we're being honest, hand on heart, we can all say it's clear that neither of those strategies work. But for a lot of parents, they don't know what else to do.
They work in the short term. They work in the short term, and you have to increase the consequences or increase the rewards, but they don't work in the long term. And we say if a family or a classroom uses restitution, discipline becomes a non-issue. A non-issue, because the child is managing themselves. But it takes some time to build that, and probably you can start having conversations with the kids about 4 years of age, I'd say. Possibly 3. But, you know, I could tell you about those kind of conversations because I think they're quite interesting and they're quite different. It's a short, would be short, you know, you don't have to have a long conversation with a small child.
I definitely want to get deeper into that. Before we dive into some of the conversations we will have with our kids as we move from one parenting paradigm into another, let's talk about the skill set that we develop when we use restitution versus the skill set when we use punishment and reward. Can we touch on that a bit?
Yes. The skill set that goes with restitution is the conversations that we have with the kids about building the beliefs. So you can fall back on what do we believe in our family, or what do we believe in our classroom, or what do we believe in our company. And the main thing here is that the beliefs have to be developed with the child. See, a lot of people, they read restitution book, they like the book, and they say, oh, it's all about beliefs. And so they take the same techniques that they used with consequences or rewards, and they say, what do we believe? Or come on now, what do we believe? You see, that's controlling. And so we would say, well, what did we talk about? What do we believe in our family about helping? What do we believe about being a patient person? What do we believe? And then we say, don't answer me right now. That's the most important thing, Nicole. Don't answer me about right now. Think about that. We're going to talk about it later. And so often the child will come back and they'll say, can we talk about that again, Mama? Can we talk about that again, Grandma? Because they like the conversations about building the beliefs and they don't feel it's controlling them. And it creates the conditions for them to reflect for themselves. And where that idea comes from, for me, is from the Aboriginal people that I've worked with. I've worked a lot in the north of Canada.
What I like about that is that what you're starting to touch on is some of the skills that I think, if you think of the era that our kids will have to grow up in terms of the working world, it's very different to 20, 30 years ago. And what we're talking about is really being driven by intrinsic motivation. And that's a skill that's just highly valued in today's working environment. I think what I can also see from your conversation is that when you say to a child, let your beliefs guide your actions, now I'm building self-awareness. And again, that's very different to when I say, do as I say or else. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes. If the child hasn't built the belief and questioned themselves, it's not of any value. And lots of places I go, they have beliefs on the wall, whether it's a company, a business, or whether it's a school, they have the beliefs there, respect, safety, responsibility. But if they haven't been redone with the team or the staff or the class or the family, redone, it won't be beneficial.
I think what I like about that, so a few years ago, when looking at family mission statements, my family and I adopted a practice where we would start each year with a new ritual. So New Year's Day, we get paper. It was all age appropriate. So when the kids were younger, we would have crayons and paper, and then we moved to canvas and paint. But we will all draw or write in our own different ways the things we wanted for our family for the year. And sometimes it included things like where the kids wanted to go, but then it included things like more hugs, more together time, more saying sorry. So those things came out for our kids. And then when we had to go back to looking at correcting behavior, we would use that almost as our North Star for the year. So it wasn't mommy or daddy saying you should behave this way because we think you should, but it was a collective agreement. This is how we would like to treat each other in our family throughout the year. So I really
and it's current. Then you do it for every year. You do it. You renew it. Then good for you.
Yeah, we do it every year. And it's surprising how the kids change every year in terms of what they want. And it's usually a great indication for us as parents of where we close some gaps and where we still have gaps to close. So because on the year when the kids say, I need more hugs, then you know something's in, so that we have to kind of build a lot more together time within the family. So for us, it was, and it still is, a great North Star.
Yeah. No, you understand the importance of this being a collaborative effort. And that's the same in a business.
And it's the same in a business. Absolutely. And I think if kids can grow with that as a habit and as a skill of working on that together, it then becomes natural for them when they get into the working world in terms of how to fit into that team and work collectively to create your mission statement or your vision. So I absolutely love that, Diane. Thanks for sharing that with us. Let's talk about why you think punishment and rewards, and I'm going back to this for the last time because I know a lot of parents find it difficult to let go, especially of punishment completely. And for a lot of parents that I talk to, they think that if we put a softer name to punishment, like consequences, that somehow that magically changes the outcome. And then I get really direct questions, like the world we live in is filled with consequences. If you hit someone as an adult, you get arrested. So why should it not be the same where parents enforce consequences on kids? And I just wanted you to touch on that for a little bit.
Well, I think some people take the ideas of restitution or of any discipline program, and they move from being the punisher or the consequencer. They move then to being laissez-faire. Laissez-faire. And then they wonder why the kids go wild. And so we always say, we have something in restitution, and it's the beliefs as you've discussed and shared, but we also have that there's bottom lines, and that the bottom lines protect the beliefs. And you don't need a lot of consequences, but you need bottom lines that is not okay. And a lot of people, they feel they don't want to do that with their kids. And so we say this is a bottom line to the person, and we invoke it as a bottom line, and that is a consequence, but we don't consequence all the small things. We problem solve on the small things.
Absolutely perfect. I get that.
In fact, it's a metaphor or a little activity that we use. It's quite a bit of fun. You know, in northern Canada, they have the muskox.
Yes.
It's one of the northern animals, like the buffalo.
Yes.
And the muskox, when the wolves come, the muskox gather and they face out to protect the small ones in the middle. And so I always tell the group, okay, let's, first of all, we'll join hands and we'll look inside and we'll look at each other. Maybe you got a dozen people, or maybe you got 40 people. And then I say, okay, the inside of this and the joining of the hands is our common beliefs that we've created together. And then I tell them, now turn outside and tighten your elbows and make the circle as tight as you can. And I say, then that's how bottom lines protect our beliefs. And that's how we stand up for what we believe. We all stand up for what we believe. And they understand that, you see, because they feel the strength in the group when you turn out. And then they understand when you're holding hands that the commonality that's in the middle. So it's a good visual for them to use, or a visceral activity.
I love it. Okay. So we've convinced parents that we should make that move from a controlled based way of parenting and to find one that's more team-like and connection-based. How do parents begin the journey of adopting restitution into their families?
Well, I suppose I've done hundreds of parents meetings and then probably over a dozen countries. And I was thinking a couple of years ago, we did one in China, and they had a Tuesday night meeting and a Thursday night meeting, and there was 1,000 parents each night that came, and we were working with translation.
Oh.
But they were very interested. And so I always start with the same thing. Within 10 minutes, I know where the parents are going to be. And the first thing I teach is about the basic needs that we all have. And I say, these are biological, these needs, and we can feel them in our body. And that I say, learned them from my mentor, William Glasser, who's the reality therapist, or the choice theory person, the leader of that. And then I say, I show them that this is belonging. We all need belonging. So do the children. Personal power, or feeling in control of the situation. This is not like domination, but what it is we like to feel things are predictable and in control. And then the third one is freedom. And there's two kinds of freedom, and we know it. There's freedom to do whatever I want to do or explore the options. And then there's freedom, like, off my back, leave me alone. So there's a deep and a cheap for each one of these. And then the fourth psychological need is fun. And that's where it ties into the 21st century, because it's the creativity comes from the fun. You laugh when you understand something, when you're working on a team, whether it's a technical team or whether it's a social services team. And so I teach that, I show it to the parents, and then I tell them, I just ask them, I said, okay, this morning when you got up in the first hour, did you have a need fulfilling morning? Did you say, good morning, honey? Have a little, honey said back to you, good morning, and you had a little belonging. Did you have things were predictable? Your car sounded the way you wanted it. Your hair went the way you wanted it. You had a little power and control of the situation. Did you have some freedom? You got to eat what you wanted to eat for breakfast. You got to listen to what you wanted to listen to on the TV or the radio. Did you have a laugh this morning? And then did you feel safe? That's physical needs. But you see, right away, I say, talk to each other about that. Already, the parents are understanding that the conversation should all be about needs, not problems. And then I'll say, did you have a bad feeling, a slight bad feeling this morning in that hour? And then what need was missing? And then they talk about that. So then maybe that's like about 5 minutes of talking together. So in the first 15 minutes of talking to a group of parents, they understand the context of restitution is looking at how can we all meet our needs and nobody gets hurt, and move forward and be creative as a community.
Now you talked about morning times, and so I couldn't help
Yeah.
but just visualize what a typical morning in a household is like as you talked about
Mhm.
the needs, and to see where as an adult maybe I'm filling my needs, and then as an adult am I creating an environment where my kids feel like their needs are filled. Now morning times can be chaotic. It's get your shoes on, where's your clothes, do you have your book bag, did you do your
Mhm.
homework?
Yeah, yeah,
And I could see quite quickly that out of all those needs you identified, freedom is one that for kids
yeah,
might be missing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
fun might be really missing because not
yeah,
somebody telling you what to do. Did you do this? Did you brush your teeth? Did
yeah.
you get your shoes? Did you da? There's no fun in that,
Mhm.
and there's no freedom. And I could quickly see why sometimes morning can feel chaotic and can be a space where we do have conflict because we're all not getting our needs met.
Yes, yes. And so I think we have something that's called collapse conflict, and I think this is also leads to the creativity, is that you recognize like how can you put the two need, you try to move the specific incident to the need,
Mm.
and then you put things that appear to be in conflict together instead of saying, oh, you get half of this dessert or and I get half or of this breakfast, or you get to do this half the time and I get to do this half the time. That's the take turns model. But we say, let's create a way that you can have freedom and we can get to school on time
Mm.
and have a little bit of order. So how can both things happen? And then lots of times the person will say, the parent or the kid, well, it's not possible. They'll say it's not possible. That means you're in the absolutely right place.
Mm.
And when I'm talking to the parents, I always say, well, how about this one? You want to be married and be free. You like that? You know, but you see, that is the prescription for a good marriage.
Mm.
I want my child to be independent, but I want him to be a group member, part of the group member. And they'll say, well, it's not possible. But you see, when you say not possible, and that is in the industrial world today too, not possible is the entry to creating an alternative. But
Mm.
we actually have to frame up the conflict and then let's walk around the block. I mean, that would be with a
Yes.
group in business, but just say, just think about it, or say to the child, just think about it. We'll figure it out. And
Mm.
then we'll talk about it again, because you have to leave it alone. And then the brain loves paradox.
Mm.
The creative brain loves it. And it will start saying, how about this? And how about this? Lots of the things we come up with, if we're working in a group, they're foolish things, but we'll have a laugh about it. But almost in all of the, one of those foolish things, there's a germ of creativity that we can use to move forward.
I think
And
the
all the energy, instead of going into conflict, it's going into creativity.
when especially because you said sometimes some of the solutions feel foolish, I think what
Mhm.
it does require to be able to explore solutions with your kids is a high degree of respect, and the space to be able to recognize the medium and long-term gains within your family of giving your kids the space to be part of the solution, because
Yeah.
sometimes the solutions can feel silly to us as adults. When my kids were younger and we were talking about leaving the house on time in the morning, and we sat down as a family and said, okay, how are we going to work this out? Mom's getting frazzled, she's getting grouchy, moving to yelling, we don't want that, you don't want that, I don't want that, so let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And my younger son said, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to bed in the night, dressed for school the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. And does it really matter?
And I had to find a space to say, okay, that's a great solution. We're going to try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he got up the next day completely drenched in sweat because he slept in his jumper and everything. And I thought, okay, we need to have a shower now. And we did that for 2 days. And then I sat with him and I go, how do you think this solution is working? Do you think it's working, or do we need to try another one? And he goes, I think we need to try another one, Mommy.
Yeah. Well, you did better than I did. My daughter wore her nightgown and cowboy boots when she was about 7 or 8 to school. And I let her. I don't know if I'd ever do it today.
I think though the openness you get from your kids to be willing to work as a team to find a solution, even just after I did it once. So in the end, what happened was he made the adjustments that I probably would have suggested in the first place. but now he
Mhm.
made them more willingly.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
because they were coming from him, and they were coming from a place of feeling respected and honored, and that
Mhm.
I couldn't have had any other way,
And included.
and included.
I think we would do the only thing that we'd add with restitution to that is that we want to move it to the need. Like, why is it important to you to wear
Mm.
certain clothes or something? Or why is it important to me to have this extra 15 minutes so I can catch the right train into town or something, you know? Um, why is it important? For me, then you'd say it's a control theory that a power or control. I want to have predictability in my environment. For the kid, you say, why is that important? She says, well, I want to be like everybody else. So then we'd say, so what is that about? Tell me, is that about belonging? Is that about power? Is that about freedom? No, he said that this one. See, even a small child, we do this in kindergarten, a small child will show you because they feel the need. So then you say, okay, so we're looking at having some freedom and some order for me and freedom for you. Now, you see, once it's framed up that way, there's many more places to go because you're off the concrete and onto the need. And he may say, well, there may be another way that he can have freedom in the morning, singing or something like that as he's making his breakfast. Or there's another way that you might have predictability for you because we're on the needs. And that is so important that everybody knows the needs, the parents and the children. And that's what the conversation's about.
Okay, so we're starting from the place where, as parents, we understand the needs. And if I'm understanding you correctly, we then explain those to our kids so that our kids understand the needs for belonging, for power, and for freedom. Where do we go next as a family in terms of trying to understand how we can bring restitution into our daily lives?
That NBA again, okay? We understand the needs and we develop the beliefs as you've talked about, and then they do a lot of thinking about the kind of brother I want to be, or the kind of friend I want to be, or the kind of helper I want to be. I could tell you a story, like my colleague here, she's been doing this with her grandchildren, and she's been asking him, well, she said he was going into the school the other day, and he held the door for his 6-year-old sister and for her to go in. They were walking in. She said, oh, thank you, that's a helpful person. I appreciate that. That's a considerate, or that's a helpful person. And then it's not like you're a good boy, but think about the kind of person you want to be. Remember what is a helpful person? He might ask it, or you might have that conversation in the car. What is a considerate person? What is a reliable person? She's done reliable. You want to be a person that people call reliable. Don't answer me. Think about it. Every time, because we've been trying to see how young we could do this conversation with, every time the kids say after that, Grandma, can we have another one of those talks? Because kids like talking about this. You see, it feels good. Rather, they never like talking about discipline and consequences.
No.
And so, but that conversation, you name it and have the child then own it and think about it. And then they'll come and say, I saw this person was a helpful person yesterday. And then you say, tell me the story. What did you see them do? And is that the kind of person you want to be? So you see, without those conversations, not on the problem. This is people, they want to teach the kids right at the moment of the problem, but the brain's downshifted and they're looking to protect themselves or tell us what we want to hear to please us. But the conversations take place at a different time as you observe and question and have the dialogue. And then that fodder is ready. The grist is ready for the mill.
Okay, I get it. So I'm just going to touch on it again for our parents that are listening. So we've talked about the needs. So parents understanding the three sort of core needs, kids also understanding it, sitting together and framing our beliefs. What are our common beliefs as a family? And then the third was, who do you want to be in the world? And in different roles that
brother do you want to be?
Yeah.
What kind of brother do you want to be? What kind of, I mean, a good marriage has people have talked about what kind of, or thought about what kind of husband do I want to be? What kind of wife do I want to be? I'm thinking about now, what kind of grandma do I want to be? Yeah. And then you have to think about it and then create it in the world.
I love that. I love it because it then creates an environment that is intentional and that doesn't just happen by chance. We're not sort of just creating a family dynamic day to day just as things stumble along, but we're creating one that we want to design. And so I love the intentionality in that.
And we create it and we model it. So I suppose on the airplane, if somebody asked me for one tool, I might say it's okay to make a mistake. But if I get a little more time, I'd say self-restitution is the most powerful tool in any relationship. And this is what it sounds like, and you'll probably recognize it. But to be intentional about it is powerful. You say, I don't like what I just did. My part of the problem is this, and this is what I want to do about it. See that I don't like what I did. That's not the colleague I want to be. That's not the mother I want to be. And I think my part of the problem is I'm trying to do this too fast, or I didn't give you enough information, or I'm doing this when I'm tired. And so this is what I'm going to do about it. Next time when we have to talk about this, this is how I want to do it. And once you model, you have opportunities. We are not always the people we want to be in the family. We have many opportunities to say this. I don't like how I talk to you. I don't like that I embarrassed you in front of your friends. And I think my part of the problem was I didn't understand this, or I hadn't asked you, and next time, you see, so all the energy goes on to next time. Most of our time is taken up in a problem situation by making excuses or blaming the other person. Those are not part of restitution. Self-restitution is the key.
That is so powerful, because that is such a different space from a space of just saying, I'm sorry.
But the biggest, as I say, the thing that erodes it the most is people take these ideas that we're talking about right now, and then they add the tone of judgment or censure or persuasion, even adding persuasion to it, or overly complimenting the child. It takes away their locus of control. And can I tell you about where I learned restitution?
Of course.
I learned it, like I'm first of all, I'm a big sister of 5 kids. And I think I had very good parenting, but I mostly used consequences and praise. Okay. But when I went up north, I taught in the north of Canada, and I went to reservations where you'd have to fly in, land a plane, get in a boat, go across the lake. And the people, they spoke the Cree language. It was in the north of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And my job, I was working for the university. My job was to train them as teachers, because we wanted to have the people be able to stay in their own community so they didn't have a turnover of teachers all the time. And so suddenly, as I'm doing this over a period of time, I go in for 2 weeks at a time and live there and live in the homes. I realized I don't think I'm helping them. Because you know what I saw? I shocked myself. As the more they were trying the strategies I was giving them, the weaker the children were becoming, and the less strong. So I'd say that the children, when they came to school, they were very independent. They were helping each other. They were sharing, because the values in any Aboriginal community, they really keep the relationships strong, because that's how the community survives. And so what I saw then is when they're coming to the school, they were looking fearfully, or they were waiting for the teacher to tell them what to do, and they weren't independent anymore. And I said, here I have these little 5-year-olds coming to school. They can look after their brothers and sisters. They go out on the dock themselves. They can do everything. And suddenly they're collapsing, and they're waiting for the teacher to tell them what to do. And so I said, I have to change this, and I have to learn this. So I said to one of my students, I said, if someone made a mistake, what did your grandma say? And she'd say it said it in Cree, and then she translated it for me. She said, well, first of all, she said, probably nothing. Give the freedom for the child to have, if there's a natural consequence, say nothing. But then she'd say the right thing, you're not doing it. I think it's quiesci toten now. The right thing, you're not doing it. And then I said, is that like the right or wrong thing? She said, no, that's the way of our people. You're not doing it. And then I said, did they tell him what to do? They never told the child what to do. The child had to look around and learn for themselves what was the right way, or the way of their family, and then decide for themselves. So see, that independence, my children were older when I started to work in the far north, and I wished I'd had this sooner, and we tried to do it with the grandkids, but that was so powerful to see that we were weakening the children, and I've seen it over and over again. You will have seen it. You see children who go to school. The parents have raised them to think for themselves and to be independent and to be problem solvers. And then they get nervous. They start watching to please the teacher, and quite often they get rebellious. And that's the kind of freedom we don't want. You see, it's not the freedom to problem solve, it's the freedom from being controlled. So that was my learning, and that is the root. Dr. Glasser was my teacher from Los Angeles, but the root of these ideas, why they're so different from a lot of discipline programs, is they come from the root of Aboriginal people. And our communities are breaking down. We have to create them. Even in cities, we have to start creating these communities and helping our children.
There's a few things you said in there that are so powerful for me. But the thing that I want to pull out the most out of that for us to touch on deeper is the fact that the relationship is the key. That the relationship with the child is so strong that it therefore doesn't require someone telling the child what to do, because the relationship is the key. You have the relationship as the motivator for wanting to belong and wanting to do the right thing.
My son, he says when he went to university, everybody went to class and then they played cards and talked to each other. He says now everybody comes out of the class and looks at their phones. You see, so that we have to then look at the whole, I hope you're going to have a speaker on that, or talking about technology.
Yeah.
Because technology is breaking down community.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, but we believe in intentionally building community. So if we're going to build it in a school, the teachers do this first. They talk about, when you go to talk to another staff member about a problem, how do you want to be received? And they write that all down. They write it down, make a list. And then they said, well, can you make that other person do that? No. Okay. So then let's look at who you can control. Who can you control? And of course, everybody laughs, myself. And so then how are you going to manage yourself when other people on staff approach you with a problem?
I love that.
And so, yeah. And so they build it together. It's always built together. And it doesn't take long.
You know, Diane, like we're talking about it, and it feels like really simple things, like you're saying, you know, like how do you want to be received? And that feels like just, but when I think about that within a family setting, and I think of sitting and talking to my kids and saying, okay, how do you want to be received when you've made a mistake? And then and then really you kind of look inside, how do I want to show up when my kids have made a mistake?
Yes.
And then that's so different, because now I've got this visual of how I want to show up that I can compare to how I'm showing up, and I can see when I'm on track and when I'm off.
Yes. And even if it doesn't work out the way you want to, you can assess, I have been the parent I want to be, or the partner I want to be.
I love that.
So there's lots of small tools that we give the teachers. We have a my job, your job thing that we give. And we do it in the parents too. The parents, they just make a list with the kids. What's the job of the parent? What's the job of the kid? And then the most important thing is what's not the job of the parent and what's not the job of the kid. And that's the hidden piece where most of the conflict is. And so that's all written down. Lots of times it's on the refrigerator or something. Okay, what's your job here? Okay, so my job is to remember to do this, or my job is to help the baby do this, or it's not your job to do my job. That's a very important one. And so that conversation, and we've got it in the book. It's all about we. It's written lots of examples of my job, your job.
That's beautiful. I want to take an example and make it really tangible for parents. And one of the things that creates the biggest conflicts in our home is around chores.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out how to move through the list of things we need to do as a family. Some parents have taken the stance where, okay, this is the list of chores and here are yours. These are the chores that you have to do. You have to clean your room, you clean your bathroom, you put away your toys.
Yeah.
And then they get to, okay, when are you going to do it? And so sometimes parents try to give that sense of freedom. You choose when you're going to do it. And you think, well, that's the truth. And then they go, you haven't cleaned your room.
Yeah, but do you see what your fingers do when you're talking to me?
You haven't cleaned your room. Right. So how do we move from this, Diane?
Well, the first thing is, and we've already talked about some other examples about the dressing, doesn't really matter. If the kind of freedom they want does, and then if it does really matter that people have to traverse that area and it's dangerous and they're stepping on toys and stuff like that. Okay, you want to have some freedom here. You want to do whatever you want to do. And it's good to have freedom, but can you do it in a way that no one gets hurt? So we do the collapse the conflict again. And that would be with any example that you want to give about, well, you've given chores, but you see, they can have, and so if you can't have freedom in that way, how are you going to have freedom? Is there another way we can give you some freedom? We got a small house here, and these things all have to be put away in the box, but you still want to have some freedom. So how can you still have some freedom and everybody be safe? Safety is a need too.
You know what I love
then you
about
just say, think about it, and we'll talk. Think about it. We'll talk about it again.
I think what I love about that is that it just takes the fire out of it. That you can't finger wave and say, how do you get freedom? It just takes the fire. And I think from a child's perspective, I feel like you're being fair to me because you're now asking me how I can fill my need. So now I know that you're concerned that my needs are also getting filled, and I'm not just dancing around trying to meet your expectations of what you want. And that feels beautiful.
Well, I think that there's some low-level restitutions that you want to get past. And the low-level ones, kid does something wrong, you say, well, so what are you going to do about sorry? Then the next one is, I'm not hearing what I want to hear, or something like that. I wouldn't say that. But then they'll say, well, I won't do it again. And then you just say, well, that's good. But you see, I wouldn't stop there. So why was it important to you to do that? Now we're moving to the need. We can get further. And how can you get what you need and I can get what I need? But just don't say, I'm sorry and I won't do it again, because they learn to say sorry. And many different sorry. You know, it's not worth the paper it's written on.
There's something that you mentioned in terms of parents reading and learning and gaining awareness of the right words to use from a restitution point of view, but still having an undertone that's control-based. What do you think is preventing parents from making that full shift where they can let go of the control and really embrace restitution as a way to respect each other and work as a team to find solutions?
I think the biggest problem is that they don't see the child as an individual coming into this life, and that the goodness is in the person already. The goodness is there and the potential is there. And I think that we try to prescribe and prepare the environment to make the kid a certain way rather than creating conditions for him to find what he loves to do and make it provide a living.
That's beautiful.
It's the basic belief. Even with, we've talked to some very well-known educators, and when we tried to talk about this, you know, have the kid think about and write about and draw about the kind of person they want to be. And they'd say, oh, that's good. That's like our activity here, and we can use this template. And they have in their mind an end result that they want. And that is almost prohibiting the beauty of the individual coming out. And people start to look like the kids, the teenagers start to look alike. They start to talk alike. The conformity is the enemy of creativity and growth for our society, and we need that for surviving.
I can see the fear though in parents that propels the need for you to meet my expectations. So I'm pregnant and I'm having this baby, and I have this dream about what this baby will be all the way through life into adulthood.
Yeah.
Now you are not playing the part in the play that I have designed.
Yeah, that's right. And we measure ourselves by the success of our children.
Yeah.
And that rather start measuring ourselves by, am I being the kind of person I want to be? I had wonderful grandmothers, fabulous women. They're in my head as the kind of person I want to be. I think my mother's gone. I think about her every day, and we have this joke. What would Nana say? What would Nana do? And so we've built that for ourselves. Now, not everybody has the opportunity to have had those models, but we can build them, and we can provide for them, and we can get rid of the toxic people that are interacting with our kids. There are some toxic people out there, and we're not brave enough at culling them.
Okay, so just as we wrap up, I just want to make sure that we make this as tangible for parents as possible so they can take some action right in their lives. So we've talked about reviewing the needs and having that discussion with our kids. And I love the fact that you said even kids in kindergarten age can understand the needs, and because they can feel it within their bodies. We've talked about sitting together and creating collective beliefs, and then talking about who we want to be within our family and the different roles we play, who we want to be in the world. And we talked about some key questions. So some of the key questions that you asked and key phrases that you used was, you talked about mistakes, and I just wanted to touch on that again in terms of what do we say to our kids. And let's take mistakes in two ways. So you've got mistakes, you've done something that you shouldn't have done, and then you've got the mistake of you've not managed your emotions in the way you should have. So, because I think parents see emotional mistakes in a different category as they see a physical mistake. So could we touch on mistakes for a bit?
Well, I think if ideally you've had that conversation with your kids, is it okay to make a mistake? What do we believe in our family? And the key here is, this can open people's eyes a lot, is if the behavior is aggressive, the mistake side is always on, it's almost always on the passive. The mistake has been caused by, let me give you an example. If a kid is aggressive, somebody says something about his family or his brother and he fights. So that's an aggressive behavior. But what would be worse when you ask that would be to not protect the family. What would be worse would to be back off and say nothing. In a relationship, you say, I'm fighting in this relationship but with this person I love. What would be worse would be leaving the relationship. So give yourself credit. You could be doing worse. You could have gone and left it. And then we reverse it the other way. You see, if the behavior is passive and the person has left, you didn't do that for no reason. What did you think would happen if you stayed? Or what did you think would happen if you kept talking to that adult? And they said, well, I think I'd say a swear or something like that. So give yourself credit. Difficult as it was, you just walked out, and it wasn't great because it didn't solve the problem, but it's better than swearing or hitting. So we never explore that territory, and that's really where the answer is for the solution.
I love that. You know what I feel within that? I feel almost empowered to then look at how I could have done it better, as opposed to if the first thing is to say you did it wrong, you made a mistake, this is why you did it wrong, that puts me, I can feel like that puts me in a defensive space where I don't have the level of clarity I need to be creative to come up with a solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, mistakes, we say, it's okay to make a mistake. If a restitution you do make, do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing. Now, it's okay to mess up in life. If you're gonna make it right, do the right thing, do the right thing. Now I do the splits, no? But you see, even that movement and that music frees up the brain. So mistake, what do we believe in our family about mistakes? It's how you learn, it's how you grow, it's how you become a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before I ask my last question, then tell all our viewers where they can find out more about you online, and where they can get your books.
Okay, well, our website's just being restructured, but it would be Real Restitution, R-E-A-L, Restitution, all one word, small letters, .com. And I was just checking because I know some of my books are on Amazon, and everybody can reach Amazon because you work in many different countries.
Yes, that's right.
But you also can order books from us through that site that I gave you. And the other thing, you know, what's been really interesting is there's a couple of districts in Manitoba, in the province of Manitoba. They buy the book, My Child's a Pleasure, and give it to the kindergarten parents at the beginning of the year. And the parents read it, and they learn about their child. And one of the things I didn't mention to you is that there's something called genetic intensity. Is of all of those needs, one is strongest in the child. That solution, that understanding leads us to the solution. So you can see the power child sits back, they watch, they'll be the last kid in the classroom to do something new, and then they'll do it perfectly. But they want to feel everything's under control. The belonging child, they hang around the teacher's desk all the time, and they very social, very social. The freedom child, they never stop moving. They never stop trying. Now, and then the fun child is, you can pick out, there's not a lot that are like that, but they make everybody laugh right at the beginning. And they're going to be great scientists, let's hope, in the future, because they see things in a different way. They have a different perspective. So this is such a fabulous discussion to have. And in teaching the parents, the first 5 minutes I teach them the needs. The second 5 minutes, they start to identify themselves and their children. And then I tell them, well, guess what? You never marry the same type as yourself, you know? And then they start laughing and talking about it. So they have a whole different way of perceiving what's going on with their child. And as often as they can even meet the needs. I mean, you want the child to be able to meet their own needs, but the parents can just restructure something because they know that child needs more choices, or that child, my oldest daughter, she always looked sort of frightened when we moved to LA. She was 6, and I could see that look on her face, like she looked sort of, what's going to happen? And I didn't know the needs then, but you see, I could have helped her so much if I'd given her a menu of the day. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, and provided some little boxes for her to organize her stuff, because that's what she loves, you see. But I didn't know about the needs. I knew my kids were very different because the next one was very active and wanted to do whatever she wanted to do. But it becomes fun. Restitution is fun.
It does become fun because I think it takes discipline, which feels like a chore and a burden for parents, and make it creative and fun-filled. And the thought of finding solutions with our kids in a creative space just makes it feel light and easy.
Well, your parents right now, from the information I've given you, you could figure out which was the predominant need in each of your parents.
Yeah.
And although the father might be the authority figure, the mother was the organizer, you know? So that's all, you know, even though he'll be the belonging one and he has to do this authority thing. It's not his thing. Anyway, it's just very much fun and explains a lot, even about in-laws.
Yeah. It does. All right, Dad, tell me, what does it mean to you to live an empowered life?
I'm easy on myself. I'm easy on myself. I'm seldom unkind to myself, although I make my share of mistakes.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And thank you for all of your amazing work. They really helped to bring us closer, deepen the connection, and fuel some team spirit in our family. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We're all about sharing and supporting this village. So if you found value in this episode, be sure to share it with your family and friends. And remember, this is a weekly show. So if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified of our next episode. As we always say in the village, you're just one connection away. With love and gratitude, empower us. Until next time.